Hey guys, it's about that time of year again where we start ramping up our throwing. So we just took a few weeks off and we're ready to start getting back in the swing of things and really start to get a lot more volume with our arms to get back and get prepared for the season ahead of us. So I wanted to talk about a couple of different things when developing your throwing program and what you can be doing as you try to prepare your arm. So the first thing I want to talk about is as we prepare and go about our throwing program, one thing to keep in mind is to make sure that we are building volume at a lower level. So think about like 45 feet or 60 feet before we start throwing at higher intensities. So what I typically like to think about when I'm starting my throwing program, I typically have guys starting around 45 feet, depending on age, 45 feet or 60 feet, and they're throwing two or three sets of 20 throws, three times, maybe four times a week. And then each week we're progressively getting a little bit more. One thing to think about each week when you progress, we're thinking about the number of throws and also the total distance that you're throwing. So you don't want to progress either one of those too much from a week to week basis. Also, when you're thinking about progressing and intensity wise, a pretty simple thing to think about is if you go further out and you're throwing farther, so 90 feet is farther than 60 feet, and that is a little bit more of an intense throw. You're throwing further, you're throwing harder. So each throw adds a little bit more stress to your arm. So we want to make sure that we're progressively loading the arm. We don't want to go from throwing no times a week to 4 or 5 times a week at 60 feet or even 90 feet or anything further than that. So that's where you start off maybe throwing three, maybe four times a week at the beginning, starting at 45 feet. And then progressively, as you get more and more, maybe you get to about 90 feet. Then maybe you can think about going, okay, if I've been throwing three times a week, let's add a day where I'm throwing 60 feet again at a lower intensity, but we're adding days. So that way our volume's not going to necessarily increase too much, but our intensity throughout the whole week may. So we're adding volume, but we're not necessarily adding intensity. So then as we continue on, maybe we get to 4 days a week, then we want to add a fifth day and then add a sixth day. So we're not doing that from okay, I'm gonna start at 3 days a week and then I'm gonna just jump up to 6 days a week. We're gonna progressively get that add each day as we increase the volume per week. The other thing to think about once you hit about 100 past 100 feet in throwing, those are starting to almost look at like long toss. So 105 to 120 feet for high schoolers and college players. At about 120 feet, we experience the same amount of arm stress as you do as off the mound. So if you look at it in terms of that, you really shouldn't have long toss on back-to-back days as you start to build your throwing program. So you may need 2 to 3 days off in between. So as you get back up, as you start to get long tossing to 180 feet plus, then you start need to adding maybe you're only long tossing twice a week until you get your arm fully capable, fully ready to handle the more stress of maybe before season getting into that third extra day. And then once season hits, you're only letting a long toss maybe twice a week again. So big things to think about. Make sure you're not increasing volume and intensity at the same time. And when you add days, make sure you're not adding a high intense day when you're adding more volume per week. Guys, if you have trouble with this or if you need assistance, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help talk through and walk through on how to build a return to throw program. And if you want an additional one, I have a couple of throwing programs return to throw from the off season in my resources tab. If you want to check that out, feel more than welcome to. And if you have any questions on that, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help. Thanks, guys.